There we are. Good
Hey,
evening
I
and
know you guys.
welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast presented by Jott-Nyx Paranormal. My name's Chad Thomas. I think I'm on the wrong side. Jamie Widener's over there
I'm over
somewhere.
here. I'm just here, present
So
and accounted for.
yeah, I think we were playing around with that at the end of the week last week,
Yeah,
and now it's
yeah.
all messed up.
Oh
So
well. You know what would
everybody's
be
gonna
really
be up.
crazy instead of being left and right if we were top and bottom.
Well, we
That
do
would
that when
really
we
be
go to the slides, remember?
well. All right. Well,
So anyway,
uh,
so Jamie, how was your week?
it has been busy, dude. It has been crazy busy. Life stuff and then packing stuff, and
You're packing? Well,
I
you're
am packed. I am packed. I think. I hope. God, I hope.
you're going somewhere?
I am. I am.
Okay.
I've got a trip planned. Tomorrow, actually, taking off after the workday is done and driving a few hours to Weston, West Virginia, if you've ever heard of it. Small
Maybe.
town and kind of
You know,
mid-state.
you know what? I think I might be headed there too.
You what? What?
Yeah.
Oh, we should coordinate this better.
Yeah,
What are
definitely.
you going there for?
I got something Thursday night. Big building. Uh,
Walmart?
no,
No,
no, an old psychiatric hospital, something like that.
something. Oh, that sounds familiar.
So anyway, we both know where
I
we're
know
going.
what you're doing. You know
What-
what I'm doing. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's why we're here tonight.
It is. So, so anyway, other than getting,
It's been a whirlwind.
it
Like
has, yeah.
how do you plan for this? Well, first of all, you know what you need to take, right? Your gear, your equipment, all the stuff you normally would take to investigation. But we're dealing with we're not dealing with general April weather. We're dealing with like late winter weather now.
Uh
um,
huh.
I think it's going to be a high of 40 and rain throughout the day, so, and dropping toward the freezing at night. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it could be, it could be stormy, which could be good
Yeah,
for what we're doing. So,
absolutely.
so I am going to apologize. My voice may come and go throughout the night, but it's mostly here, so we're going
It's
to
a
go
lot
with it.
better. Yeah, way to go. Your crack medical team has really pulled you through,
Yeah.
um,
So,
and
uh,
all those honeybees that donated the sugar and honey to you. So,
exactly. So, Jamie was afraid he was going to have to read my script tonight, and I don't wish that on anybody. So,
yeah, it'd been we would have covered it no matter what. It's all
exactly.
good. So
So, so anyway, anything else, Jamie, or should we just get right into
let's
this?
let's do this. This has been so long coming. Like months and months and months we've known and talked about it like a little bit, now building up to it. So let's
Yeah.
do this.
So we are talking tonight about Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Before I start, I do want to give credit to the photographer of the pictures I'm using. They are owned and copyrighted by Walter Arnold of Walter Arnold Photography, and I am using them under the educational arm of the Fair Use Copyright Law. So just get that out of the way. They are not my pictures. I do not take credit for them. Mr. Arnold has done a wonderful job, so I just figured I would give him credit and use his great work. So
Right.
anyway, there we go.
Okay.
So tonight we're talking about the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. As you know, as we've been bantering about, the Jott-Nyx Paranormal is traveling to Weston, West Virginia to investigate the facility. And before investigating, I like to know the history and the background of the place that I'm going to explore. I feel that this is important to an investigation, and I would rather know the history than the stories and experiences other people have had, because knowing some of the general expectations of a location isn't a bad idea, but hoping or expecting a specific thing to happen can lead to a letdown and disappointment, which can turn that whole experience into a bad one. We've been there. So,
Yeah.
but before we start wandering the halls of Tala tonight, I want to dig a little deeper into the history of mental illness.
Before we go too far into anything, we were remiss to catch up on some comments real quick.
Okay, go for it.
So, first of all, Bert Lynch is with us, and he already called it, so no one else. Road trip with a lot of exclamation points.
Uh
I think 5 or 6 or 7. I don't know. They're very small lines. I'm like, I forgot my glasses. That's what's wrong. All
huh.
right.
Oh,
Like,
jeez.
I'm like Mr. Magoo here. Can't see anything. Jim's with us. He said, "Hi guys, switch sides. Freaky Tuesday." So you're right. Frankie Adayo is with us. Tala Yahoo or Hoo Hoo, sorry. Todd and Carmelo are with us. So right, yeah, you're going to Tala. How could you forget? That's all we talk about.
Oh, and but while we're there, I wanted to congratulate Todd and Carmela on their podcast. They had their inaugural episode last night,
Yep.
so congratulations on that.
I saw it today. I was packing and everything else last night. It totally blew my mind. It slipped my mind, I should say. My mind was blown by the first episode as I watched it this afternoon. Great work. Looking forward to a lot of good stuff coming there, along with Chris Allgood and Audrey Keeler. Great set of hosts, and looks like a lot of great plans coming up for them.
Hmm.
Monday's at 9, and they'll be here next week or before you know it. So.
Yep.
And then also Heather Lynch is with us too. She's ready to be educated for the investigation. I don't know if that's what we're going to do, but here we go. And she's also packed and ready to go. One of our traveling compatriots, picking up some fresh eggs from the neighbor so Bert can make us brunch on Friday. We are crashing together, the Lynches, Chad and I, at an Airbnb, which is, for when we travel, I gotta say this, we don't get to travel often enough where we stay together. We're always finding hotels and everybody's got their own room, which is fine, obviously.
Hmm.
But Airbnbs, VRBOs, whatever they are, they give you a chance to commingle, still having a separate space. So I really am looking forward to this just for that alone, the camaraderie and the team, of all of us in the same team kind of thing. So,
Right. Me too.
and brunch.
Yeah.
It wasn't like brunch. Um, and then Tard and Camilla also added, we'll be curious to see what experiences and activity you have. Definitely will need to share your notes. Next week's episode will actually be a post investigation episode to kind of get everybody who came along with us, try to get everybody together here, as we've done for other investigations, and then kind of do a round robin kind of conversation around what we all experienced uniquely.
Hmm.
Hopefully, there's a little bit of time since we're doing this on a Thursday. There might be enough time to capture some information, like the evidence review, and show some stuff. So if we catch anything, of course, because it's never a guarantee. So. But yeah, that'll be coming up next week as well. So we'll cover that at the end. All right, we're caught up.
All right.
All you.
So before we start wandering the halls, I want to dig a little deeper into the history of mental illness in the United States. And I'm going to start using an antiquated term only because that was the mindset of the day. I mean, no disrespect. In colonial times, people were considered insane if they exhibited aberrant behavior or behaviors that deviated significantly from what was considered normal behavior. It was believed that people exhibiting this behavior were possessed by demons, witches, or possibly the devil himself. In looking back at some historical documents, some modern day psychologists have concluded that the majority of people executed as witches in the Salem witch trials in 1692 were actually showing signs of mental illness or what would have been called insanity in those days. So it's an interesting piece of history to dig into there. Executing people as witches was not the only way the insane were treated. For almost the next 100 years, the treatment would be considered barbaric by modern standards. If someone was suspected of being insane, their family would typically hide them away in an attic, hidden sheds, secret rooms, or even holes in the ground. These were the lucky ones. If there was no family to take care of them, or the family didn't want to deal with them, the insane were remanded to the local jail along with common prisoners. Some places would chain them to the wall naked. It didn't matter what the weather was like, hot or cold, they lived in their own filth and excrement. In the 1700s, facilities were beginning to be built for the insane, but the goal for these facilities was not to make them better, but to keep them away from polite society. Luckily, times and ideas changed. In the 1800s, new ideas came about in regards to treating the insane. One of the main people in this evolution was a woman named Dorothea Dix, born in 1802 to an alcoholic father and a mentally unstable mother. She ended up raising her two infant brothers. In 1817, she opened a private school in Worcester, Massachusetts. And yes, for those math whizzes out there, she was 15 years old at the time. With no formal education, she taught young women in the time when formal education was unheard of for females. 5 years later, she opened a similar school in Boston. At the age of 39, she had a life altering moment while visiting a jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She witnessed mentally ill inmates and how they were being treated. This horror inspired her to a life of advocacy for the mentally ill. She started in Massachusetts and got the legislature to authorize funds to improve conditions for the mentally ill. She took her crusade to other U.S. states as well as Asia and Europe. It was because of her efforts that the first state hospital for the mentally ill was built in Trenton, New Jersey in 1848. It would be this hospital that Dorothea would eventually have herself admitted to after having several debilitating breakdowns. She lived here for the last 6 years of her life. It was thanks to Dix that people found a new way of thinking about the mentally ill and that funding became available to build places for the insane. Thinking about things differently and having money are a step in the right direction, but you still need a plan. Up until now, almshouses and jails were still the norm, but we're going to introduce Thomas Story Kirkbride to our family of people here. He was born to a family of farmers. Thomas was too frail to work the farm, so his father encouraged him to study medicine. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 1832 with a degree in medicine, hoping to become a surgeon because it was prestigious. He looked for a residency. The only thing he found was a residency in a small town outside of Philadelphia at the Friends Asylum for the Insane. It was a Quaker-run facility that focused on removing the restraints, promoting a family environment, and giving the patients mental and physical stimulation. Though he did well here, he still wanted to be a surgeon. In 1833, he was offered a surgical residency and went on to be a successful surgeon and had a private medical practice. He had no intention of treating the insane. His work hadn't gone unnoticed, though, and in 1840, the hospital governors offered him the superintendent position at the newly built Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane. It was a prestigious and well-paying job, so he took it more for those reasons than the opportunity to treat the mentally ill. He continued at this post until he retired 43 years later. He would go on to study treatment and housing of the mentally ill. In these studies, he began developing the idea that the building was just as important as anything else to the cure. So in the early 1850s, his hospital population was outgrowing the facility. This allowed him to go to the hospital governors with a plan and ask for funding to build his ideas. They approved the building of a new facility based on his theories, and the Kirkbride Plan was born. Over the next several decades, over 300 facilities would be built based on his plan. He would become known as the foremost authority on hospital design. His plan included incorporating light, fresh air, and nature into the building. Doors were carefully positioned so that when opened, sunlight would flood through them. Open spaces for patients to gather and to socialize and eat were plentiful, and even the grounds were landscaped in such a way that patients looking out the windows could only see rolling hills and openness, nothing that would suggest that their hospital was also surrounded by gates to keep them locked inside. So as you can probably guess, that brings us back to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Due to the work of people like Dorothea Dix and the Virginia legislature authorized the building of a facility across the West Fork River from Weston in the early 1850s. So at this point, we're still talking about Virginia because it's pre-Civil War, and it was the Civil War that split Virginia and West Virginia. It was designed by Richard S. Andrews of Baltimore. He had designed the south wing of the U.S. Treasury Building and the Maryland Governor's Mansion. A committee toured several other state facilities and determined what was required, most of these based on Kirkbride's idea. So looking at the finished product, it resembled Kirkbride's design in many ways. The General Assembly appropriated $50,000 and construction of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum began in 1858. Much of the work was done by prison laborers. In 1861, the Civil War put a hold on construction. When Virginia seceded from the Union, the new government demanded the return of the hospital's unused funds. The 7th Ohio Volunteer Infantry seized the money from a local bank before it made its way to the Confederacy. This money eventually became the startup treasury for what we now know as West Virginia. Money from this treasury allowed the construction to continue in 1862. Unfortunately, the site was occupied by both Union and Confederate troops, and building supplies were taken by Confederate raiding parties. In 1863, when West Virginia became a state, the facility was renamed the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane. On October 22, 1864, under the direction of Dr. R. Hills, the first patients moved into the facility. By 1868, there were 200 patients being cared for at the facility. In 1870, the legislature approved another $110,000, and construction would continue until 1881. A central clock tower was completed in 1871. Segregated rooms for people of color were completed in 1873. The facility was self-sufficient as it had its own farm, dairy, waterworks, and cemetery. In 1902, a gas well was drilled on the property. In 1913, the West Virginia legislature renamed the facility to Weston State Hospital. On October 3rd, 1935, a fire was started in the main building that would destroy 6 of the men's wards. This also led to the cupola falling through the roof. After being repaired, the building remained in use for almost 60 years. Now, as we know from some of our other episodes, like Season 1, Episode 24, when we talked about Pennhurst, funding became a problem, so people were admitted to collect the money. This could be for a number of reasons, including asthma, laziness, egotism, domestic troubles, and even greediness. This led to an overwhelming number of patients being admitted, causing the asylum to face a shortage of staff and beds. This quote from roadunraveled.com seems hard to believe today. A man could admit his wife for any reason, and if he decided never to bring her home, if, say, he started a new relationship, she remained as a ward of the state. Children often accompanied their mothers, and some children were born within the hospital walls and were raised there. Other children were dropped off in front of the hospital as orphans. A big part of the hospital's history was written by people who should never have been there in the first place. Hard to believe that that's something that was acceptable in the time, huh, Jamie?
Oh my, yeah. Well, yes, agreed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw in the last couple weeks a list of probably 50 things that were acceptable reasons to be
Yeah,
admitted
yeah.
to the Tala.
I have that, and we can share it a little bit later when we're talking about
Okay.
when we go into discussion.
Yeah, it just blew my mind, like the amount of things that were in the era, and
Mhm.
yeah, obviously still not acceptable by overall sense, but what was allowable, maybe a better way to say it, in the
Right,
era, for admission to just pass people off.
right.
Man,
So,
this might be a good time to pause here for a second. I want
sure.
to share this comment from. Well, first of all, going back to what happened with folks, you know, with mental illness back in the day. Bert was kind enough to comment that his mom kept him in the basement. Um, I don't believe that, but maybe it's true. It is Bert after all.
Yeah.
But Frankie Adio, who is a social worker by trade and profession, anytime I walk into a facility like Tala, it is not lost on me that this was what my field looked like at one point. Tremendously and traumatically flawed, to say the least. It's hard for me to do actual paranormal work there because I get caught up in the empathy of it all.
Yeah.
And I agree with that completely. I coming from the social service world myself for quite a few years, the amount of trauma that is on people and the energy that it brings and continues to linger is got to be so heavy here. That is one of my concerns going in as well.
Hmm.
In advance of this, knowing what this was like, and what
Right.
it could still be is quite gonna it's going to be
Well,
quite interesting.
in being semi-sensitive myself, it's one of the things that worries me. I know several of our teammates have already talked about having visions and dreams and things,
Lead up stuff, yeah.
and it's amazing. But I am a little worried about going there just because I know how emotional I could feel going to some of these places, and
Mhm.
this is probably the top one.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yes, we will. You're right.
So, so
And thanks for sharing that, Frankie, by the way.
yeah,
That's
no, I do appreciate that, and
quite well made.
Frankie, I'm glad that you joined us tonight because I was thinking of you when I was writing some of this stuff, just how the field has changed. So, the facility was originally designed to house 250 patients in solitude. So they each basically had their own room, their own space. The
Mhm.
hospitals held 717 patients by 1880, 1,661 in 1938, over 1,800 in 1949, and at its peak, it had 2,600 in the 1950s in overcrowded conditions. Things were so bad that bed sharing measures were implemented. A patient would get 8 hours of rest, and then the bed would be occupied by another patient on a different schedule. This is not what Kirkbride had dreamed of. In 1938, a committee organized by a group of North American medical organizations stated that the hospital included epileptics, alcoholics, drug addicts, and non-educatable mental defectives among its population. In 1949, the Charleston Gazette did a series of reports that included stories about poor sanitation and insufficient furniture, lighting, and heating in much of the complex, while one wing, which had been rebuilt using the Works Progress Administration funds following the 1935 fire, was comparatively luxurious. So I found that interesting. Kirkbride's plan was for holistic care of patients in these facilities. Even though this facility started in those routes, as patients overwhelmed the staff, other methods of treatment were employed. These methods typically didn't heal the patients, but more often made them controllable. I'm going to get these. These are medication names, so I'm probably going to get them messed up, but I'm going to try. Chlorpromazine, also known as Thorazine, was introduced to treat psychotic disorders, but it was widely prescribed and often used to keep patients in a catatonic state. Similarly, laudanum, an opiate most commonly used to treat pain, was regularly provided to patients. Then there were different types of shock therapies. They included insulin shock, which put patients into comas, and electroconvulsive therapy or shock treatment, which we all know what that's done from other reports that we've looked at. We're going to move into another sad time for this facility. In 1948, the first lobotomy was performed in West Virginia. Neurologist Walter Freeman, working with James Watts, had developed the surgery based on the work of Egas Moniz. Freeman's intention was that of reducing overcrowding of mental health hospitals and the corresponding financial burden that many states faced. So his theory was to make things better. Transorbital lobotomies, also known as ice pick lobotomies, could be completed quickly and did not, in Freeman's mind, require surgical training or an operating room. By teaching the transorbital protocols to doctors and psychiatrists, Freeman hoped to advance his ultimate goal of ridding the world of mental illness. Weston State Hospital was one of 4 facilities that were part of the West Virginia Lobotomy Project. Between 1952 and 1955, there were 787 West Virginians that were lobotomized at the 4 facilities. It is believed that Freeman took part in most, if not all, of these procedures and charged $25 per patient. He encouraged crowds to watch like it was entertainment. Again, RoadUnraveled.com stated almost all patients who underwent this procedure were completely altered, often unable to provide even basic self-care, and many died during the lobotomy. Lobotomies were horrific, brutal, and all too frequently ended or irreversibly changed lives. Looking back at this, we now know that the procedure doesn't work, and it's unfortunate that so many people were treated to prove that fact. Isolation was also another form of treatment used for uncontrollable patients. This could be for hours, days, or weeks, depending on the severity of the patient. This didn't always go as planned, as isolation can make patients worse. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. We began to see a reduction in population in the 1980s. This was likely due to changes in how mental illness was treated, but patients who could not be controlled were still locked in cages. Governor Arch Moore announced plans in 1986 to build a new psychiatric hospital and convert the Weston Hospital to a prison. As work began, the state found this unconstitutional, and the work was stopped immediately. The William R. Sharp Jr. Hospital was built in Weston, and the Weston State Hospital closed. This was due largely in part to a class action lawsuit that was filed by family members of patients. The facility sat vacant for years after that. It was used for fairs, church revivals, and tours. While these were all good-intentioned things, 2 1999 events on May 22nd and May 29th were not. Approximately 20 local off-duty law enforcement officers decided to use the building for a paintball battle. According to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the building was stained and marred with countless marks from paintballs. This caused an uproar in the community and cost at least 3 people their jobs. In 1978, the main building was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and in 1990, it was named a National Historic Landmark. Now the building has been opened up for tours and investigations. There are multiple tour options available, as well as paranormal investigations, thank goodness, or we'd have a wasted trip. For more information on that, you can head to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.com for all the information you need. They're open this year from March 29th through November 9th, Tuesday through Sunday. And I want to note that it went from the Weston State Hospital back to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum when it was purchased by the private group that owns it now. So I know you may want to know more information on haunts of the place, but I don't want to give too much away. I will say that while the exact number is not known, it is estimated that 30,000 people may have died due to unsanitary conditions, poor staffing, and lack of care at the facility. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things one may expect while investigating. I'm not going to go too deep into anything. Hopefully, we will have some personal experiences to share next week. If you don't want to know, now would be a good time to go get a snack and come back in about 5 minutes. Jamie, you're not allowed to go.
Oh, wait. I could use a snack. I mean, really.
So,
all right.
So, as with most haunted places, there are reports of dark shadows, objects moving on their own, disembodied voices and cries, bangs on the walls, and breaking glass. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum has many of their own stories. Here are a few I found. Whether they are true or not, we will just have to see. So we're going to start with what's called the back room. In the room towards the back of one of the wings, a patient named Dean was murdered by Big Jim and Dave Mason. They attempted to hang him, but that failed. When that failed, they placed his head under a bed frame and jumped on it until the bed frame touched the floor. Other patients were also murdered in cold blood by their peers, as overcrowding, mental illness, and poor care became the lethal combination for aggression. So this room is known for its cold spots and quiet cries, which is said to be Dean. So earlier I talked about the isolation cells. Asylum staff were empowered to send their patients into isolation if they were deemed uncontrollable. This, of course, was up to the discretion of the staff that was already irritated and overworked. Isolation was so terrible that patients would do just about anything to get out of it. One story in particular is about a former boxer who suffered from head injuries during his career that left him violent and emotionless. He attempted to beat down the metal door that isolated him. He ended up ripping the door off its hinges, leaving visible dents in the steel. When he finally got the door off, he handed it to one of the nurses and calmly returned to his room. The rooms used most for isolation tend to have violent energies attached to them, with visitors reporting being pushed or scratched, as well as in disembodied voices saying, "Get me out of here." So next we're going to talk about Little Lily. This story comes to us from the Spartan Shield website. Little Lily is one of the most well-known ghosts. This is one of the most prominent versions of Gladys and Lily's story. Gladys was sent to the asylum when she was supposedly raped by Civil War soldiers. When she was admitted, she found herself pregnant. Gladys passed away during childbirth, leaving her infant left alone. The nurses in the ward immediately took to the little girl, naming her Lily. According to the legend, the child only had one home for a very short period of time. When Lily was 9, she contracted pneumonia, which ultimately killed her. Now people like to visit Lily's room and bring her things like toys, stuffed animals, and candy. Many people state that the toys will sometimes move, and even the candy will disappear. Many believe that this is Lily's way of playing with the guests. Ruth. On the first floor, there was a female patient named Ruth. She resided in the Civil War wing with the veterans. According to her legend, she hated men with an unbelievable rage. To this day, some people say that she will throw things at men if given the chance. Other spirits that are believed to reside here are Civil War soldiers who were housed in their own wing after the war, Nurse Elizabeth, who still roams the halls taking care of her patients. There is also James. He had a heart attack while taking a bath in one of the upstairs bathtubs. This group of spirits are typically friendly. The last one on my list is called Slewfoot. No one knows how the man became known as Slewfoot. Supposedly, he roamed the upper floors and killed and tortured people in the upstairs bathroom. To this day, he haunts the bathroom and the upstairs floor. With everything that happened here, I'm sure this is just a small list of the spirits that roam the halls of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. So, I want to cite some sources, and Jamie, we can talk about things and see what you think. Newspapers.com, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, June 20th, 1999. AshleyPetersonMedium.com, What Made You Crazy in 1864. www.wvencyclopedia.org, entries 1106 and 2339. Trans-Allegheny-Lunatic-Asylum.com. www.roadunraveled.com, destination guides, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Let's see, GEHSpartanshield.org, 4568 features, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum ghosts. WalterArnoldPhotoshelter.com. And we can't forget our friends at Atlas Obscura, Places, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And I love this line from their website. They may label this as a ghost hunt, but it's also an awesome legal urban exploration of an abandoned set of asylum buildings. So that's what I got, Jamie. What do you think?
Let's go. Let's go right now. Let's get this going. 24, whatever, 36 more hours until we get there. 48 hours. I don't know. I'm losing track of time here, but yeah, we got to go. I'm aware of most of these stories by the media outlets and the sources that are available, around it as well. Um, and and y'all know I like paranormal shows, I guess, so that's not a secret. But Expedition X, with the Josh Gates show, with two other investigators he sends out to the world, they launched season 8 in episodes 1 and 2 at Tala, and they came across some rather interesting stuff, and quite a few things they did there, a lot of tools they used, but one of them was the Estes method. In the room where Dave Mason and Big Jim killed the other inmate, with the bedpost, and they were getting actual responses from, at least seemingly, from those individuals, at least Dave Mason. And then at the very end of the second episode, and in the time frame that they were doing that session, something happened in another area that was chilling. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend watching these 2 episodes. They're on demand, so they're only 45 minutes a piece. They're easy. I rewatched them Tuesday night, Monday night, whatever. On accident, honestly. I wasn't really planning on it, but I was, it was a very late night because of packing and other stuff, and I sat down on the couch and just kind of flipped through some stuff. I'm like, oh, well, let's watch this. And then I thought, just for a few minutes, the next thing you know, an hour and a half later, and it's midnight, and I'm like, I gotta go to bed. But there's so much history here going all the way back, and the idea that people were mistreated at best and just flat out abused, and I don't know, there's so many directions to go here, but just the blatant horrific conditions that people were put in and left in and subjected to. There's no way, in my mind at least, and this is Jamie Widener's opinion, but this place has to have activity. It just has to, for 150 years of just trauma and drama alone. And I guess it is, we have to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of folks who were there may not be fully aware that where they were. That's really, it really makes me sad, and makes me kind of the empathy thing that Frankie was talking about, it really comes more into play there than the ones who were aggressive and violent, those things, because there was no place that would take them otherwise. Even the jails, wouldn't take them. Um, you were talking about the governor um, of West Virginia back in the 80s was, stopping the process of turning it over to a prison. But that's also the same time, if you remember, when we were at West Virginia Penitentiary, there was a prison break, and guards were captured or kidnapped in the process, and one was killed. And that same governor wasn't willing to really help out there,
Right.
if I remember that correctly. So it's interesting, how once you become a criminal, you kind of things change for you, and
Right.
you are kind of there for wherever the state wants to send you. And putting those people in with individuals who are um, have a mental disability or handicap, it just that's not right. It's just it's wrong on so many levels anyway.
Right.
And the poor people were subjected to their violence and their sadism and all this stuff. Just the evilness that they brought. They didn't have a chance.
Right.
To have any kind of life there.
So you were talking earlier about the list of things that you could be.
Yeah,
So here's that list.
it's really long.
It's really long. Obviously, it's going to be hard to read here, but um, it's crazy. Sorry, that's a bad word to use for this, but it's amazing. Some of the things kicked in the horse by a head, or kicked in the head by a horse. Ill treatment by husband. Imaginary female trouble. um, Immoral life. Marriage of a son.
What?
Some of these I'm just not going to read. Opium habit, overaction of the mind, overstudy of religion. Parent. This is okay. I shouldn't say this, but here's a West Virginia one for you. Parents were cousins.
Yeah.
Um,
I
uh,
mean, when weren't they? Oh
yeah,
no.
bad company, bad habits and political excitement, bad whiskey, bloody flux, carbonic acid gas, congestion of the brain, decoyed into the army. Uh, what else? Domestic affliction, dropsy. If you had the dropsies, you. Um Fighting fire, fever and jealousy, exposure in army, exposure in quackery, exposure in heredity, um, epileptic fits, time of life. I just uh, women troubles, smallpox, snuff eating for 2 years. Couldn't be a year and a half, 2 years.
2 years.
Uh, just
It,
you know,
it's stuff was just made up to dump you off, basically, right?
it sounds like it. Yeah, seduction and disappointment.
Well, that's every weekend and you're single. So no, no. So same with the women trouble.
Mm,
But it is of an era when things were different, perhaps. But also, it is exactly that. It's just like, let's find an excuse to leave you here and add it to the list. Um,
right,
I'm just amazed by this. And it's not just here. There's so many other facilities all over the place that were in this genre, this era, that you were able to do the exact same thing to. You mentioned earlier, like just people getting dropped at the door, and there they are, and therefore they're
right,
now a resident. And that's, that going back to the 250, intentional set people who were supposed to be there for primary care, and it's swelling to 2,600 or so. That's exactly how it happened. It's just
right,
people just kept arriving, and without any real solid parameters for acceptance and admission. There wasn't like there was a waiting list and you had to, wait your turn. They were just people just get dumped,
right,
and without anything else to do with them. I mean, it's I guess it's gracious that they were taken in instead of just left to
right,
Weston itself, the town, but wherever,
right.
but or sent
And
somewhere else. But it is still that's kind of what led to all of this as
and
well.
this is sort of the knowing from some personal experience, this is sort of the opposite of the issues we have nowadays, where it's hard to get a bed in some of these facilities because you can't.
Well, the world's
you,
changed for the
the
better.
world has changed for the better, but unfortunately, we don't have enough caregivers
Yes.
in this field. And my heart goes out to people who do this. Frankie, we appreciate what you do.
Yep.
It just there are not enough people in the world who take care of the mentally ill, and it's and it's good when people don't have to be in a facility like this, and we have integrated people into normal lives, and that's a great thing. Jamie, you're aware every summer I go do a camp for a week,
Mhm. Yep.
and it's a camp for the mentally handicapped, and I it brings me so much joy to do that for a week, just to see them having these campers coming back year after year. And when we think of campers, you think of kids. These are not kids. These are I do the old people's camp, and it's there are people, we had people there who are 80 years old, and some of have been coming since the 1960s. Like, it's a great experience, and I'm so glad that we have opportunities to include them in daily life, and give them things like this and allow them to do what they want to do. So times have definitely changed.
Absolutely. Well, let me, if you will, please let me go back
Mhm.
and catch up on a lot of comments because I was very remiss and engaged what we were discussing there.
Mhm.
I have to figure out where we left off. There is a lot, and I appreciate y'all for doing this too. Thanks for engaging. Um, let's see. There's some eggs. Okay, so there. Mom kept me in the basement. Yeah. Okay. There's this is basically Bert saying he would have got dropped off if he lived in West Virginia. Um, with that, there was some conversation between our guests with each other, which is fun. Um, I want to step back to this from Todd and Carmela. Um, we were in that room. Carmela had an experience in the room where the two guys hung the patient, which would have been Dave Mason and Big Jim. Could you, and I'd love to get like a little bit more elaboration on what the experience that Carmela had there, if possible. Um,
If
and
you want
then,
to, yeah,
if you can or wish, either way. Um, let's see. Wonder if the ladies in the criminal war will have fun with Chad and Jamie. Hey, we're fun, right? So come on,
yeah.
of course they will. Uh, maybe. Uh, Tim, one of our travel partners, where's Jerry? We're going to lose Jerry Keller of our team. We always do. Got to get an air tag on that guy. It's inevitable. We'll lose him in the darkness. Um, and Todd is saying it's a huge place and overwhelming, but you will have a great time. I hope so.
Yeah.
I said last week we're going in. I'm not sure when we're coming out. Kind of thing. So, uh, and I'm not sure what this means, but they were good, Jamie. And let's see, this was interesting. I believe the architect at Trans-Allegheny is the same architect at the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital in Trenton, near them, where Todd and Carmela live. And Bert says, "I'm excited and nervous. Tala has to have a lot of emotional energy, more than Penhurst."
Hmm.
And
Which that's the way I'm leery, because
right, I remember you're going out to the Paracon.
and even before I got to the gates, I didn't
Yeah,
even realize on what I was on the original property, and I was feeling emotions like I can't explain.
yeah, I think of that, a lot actually. That you're explaining that situation,
Hmm.
and because things aren't what they used to be.
Right.
Properties get subdivided. We did the episode on Wilson Castle a while back, and the original
Hmm.
grounds for the property were massive, and now it's minor.
Right.
You mentioned Leap Castle when you jumped into it last week, um,
Uh-huh.
the week
Yeah.
before, but that has been subdivided down drastically from its original um, plot size. So
Right.
and the stuff was obviously is tied all to that land around it. I'm wondering how far out from Tala we're going to be till we start experiencing some things. Obviously, some of our teammates are already, getting dreams and other connections to it. So
Right.
it's interesting. It's really interesting
Yeah.
to see how it's going to go. Um,
Sorry, I was jumping around. I didn't mean to pop those up.
I wasn't looking at you. I was looking at the camera, so I didn't even notice. Um, going back to the list, Todd mentioned my favorite is Women Trouble. Yeah. Yeah, me too. And Frankie has said, "Oh man, looking at that list, I'd be on it for life." Um, yeah, well, we know where to find you at least. Um, and let's see, I think we're caught up. Yeah, and then Frankie, thank you. I appreciate you both, of course, and thanks for doing what you do.
Mhm.
All right, so where are you at on this? There's a lot, and you did the lion's share of the research to get here to this.
I mean, I definitely think it's got to be haunted. It's got to have paranormal activity. Um, I saw a video of their gift shop. Now, I'm always leery when it's a security camera shot and something happens that's just on the edge of the camera. So,
Yeah,
somebody could have pushed it. Their story is that they close at 6:30. This was or 6 o'clock, and this was at 7:30, and a display fell over, was like pushed over. I don't know, but there's things like that happening all around, and there's a lot of people who get scratched, and so it's not necessarily a safe place. You need to go in and protect yourself and be wary, and if we feel uncomfortable, we need to make sure that we take a break and walk away.
yeah. Communication is a key part of this, and honesty about it. Absolutely.
All right. So Todd got back to you
Yeah,
on.
I was going to click that. Let me. Oh,
I
hold
got
on.
it. So
Hands free.
sorry.
It's okay. You got it.
So
Uh, the answer to the issue, the question of what Carmela experienced is she had head pressure and this would be a reason to get admitted right there. Head pressure. I'm sure that's on the list, right?
yeah, I
Um,
think so.
when the mood was playful and airy, it was the boy who had his head stepped on with the bed frame, and then continuing to say, and when the two guys who did it to him, the mood went heavy. So I can certainly understand that. And that's really going back to my comment about the uh, Expedition X episode is that when they were having the SD session in that same space, a person stepped out of one of the maximum security cells with against the laser grid. I mean, it's a clear person; you can see it. It's kind of like, and you take it for what you want it to be, right?
Right.
This thing is interpretation, but to me, at least, it looks like someone breaks the plane coming out of that cell where no one should be, and it's in the time of the call and response around that. SD session, so which was engaging that person. So it's compelling to some degree. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I'm curious to see what we find.
Definitely. Yeah.
So we just got to get there,
Yeah, we
right?
do.
You
So,
know?
one thing, Jamie, I didn't cover, and you had brought it up earlier
Oh
when we
yeah,
saw
yeah.
each other. Um, I'm looking at some notes off to the side here. That's why I'm not looking at the camera. Cemeteries. Where is it here? Um, I'm going to read right off the Road Unraveled site. While some people eventually left the asylum under their own power, many died there. The staff notified next of kin when a patient passed away, and in many cases, families did not return to identify or take the bodies for burial. Patients who were not claimed by their families were assigned a number, buried in a cemetery, and issued a simple gravestone reflecting only their identification number. Over time, many of the gravestones were removed and even repurposed. Today, there is virtually no way to identify the bodies buried at the asylum. Patients were always buried, though they were never cremated.
Wow.
So, so Jamie, we were looking at the Google map earlier,
Hmm.
and there are two very large plots that are marked cemeteries
Yeah,
um, behind the facility, which would probably be part of the property at the time. And if we're talking upwards of 30,000 people,
that's
definitely would
that's
have been a lot of people, a
wow.
lot of area.
Yeah, yeah. Um, we have some of our teammates who are down there already. We have a group chat, kind of thing going on, and I sent a message like, "Hey, by the way, I was just Google Earthing, or Google Mapping. I'm sorry, Weston to see what amenities are around it, like if there's a grocery store, restaurants, whatnot." And I couldn't help but notice behind Tala, it's like to the southwest a bit, there's two sites that are noted as cemeteries and on the map, the physical map. And then as I turned it over to the satellite view, I realized that they're out like in the middle of nowhere off a dirt road. Like that has to be, this like plots for the folks who passed. And Tim and Erica, who are out there already, said they went back that way yesterday, and that dirt road is exactly what it seems. It's very rustic and very narrow at some points, and they got stuck, not stuck in the sense of physically stuck, but they couldn't turn around. So it's one of those things where, again, where you put people out of sight, out of mind, all the way, back there, kind of thing. And
Mhm.
obviously, the property was a lot bigger back then, so I'm not sure if it's even on site anymore. But it's not, by any means, it doesn't look like on the satellite view. It does not look like a cemetery as we would expect, with headstones and some kind of markings of some
Right.
kind, parameters to set
Right.
up
It's
the
pretty
side.
much a pauper's field, which is
Yeah, yeah, good
which
way to
is
say it.
a shame. And yeah.
Well, that's how the people were treated, right? If no one claimed you, and I mean, at least there was burial and not cremation, perhaps, just to keep in the sense of last rites. But there is that idea that you're sitting in an unmarked grave, and you might, depending on the day and the circumstance, you might not be alone in it. So,
Right. Well,
um,
I
kind of,
mean,
wow.
you didn't have your own bed when you were at the facility. I
Well, absolutely.
mean, that's one of the things that I find, I mean, not impossible to believe, but it's, bed rotations.
That's
Right.
well, again, different era, different time.
Mhm. Yep.
All right, well, Thursday at 9 p.m. can't come quick enough. Just think that in what 47 hours we're in. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, West
So,
Virginia, here we come.
yep. And you're heading down tomorrow, aren't you, Jamie?
I am going to leave work a smidge early and come here and finish up some stuff I got to do, and then hopefully be on the road and be there between 11 and 12 tomorrow night. Sleep in a little bit. Have a hotel for the night, and then we'll transition over with the Lynches. So I just wanted to drive all in one day and then investigate all night and then
Yeah.
blah blah blah. So I'm getting old. I learned my lesson. I think I told you this when we went up to the Hinsdale House in Western New York. Drove up that afternoon, did all night, and then turned around after the investigation and drove back. Um, just
Yeah.
logistics made it work that way for me. What I needed to do, and man, it was a bad idea. It was a really bad idea. The home drive was the bad idea,
Yeah.
not the investigation. Well, Hinsdale was all right, but
Yeah.
I have made my opinion on that known already. But but it was one of those things where I really should not have done it. So
Yeah.
lesson learned. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
So
radius now.
I'm hoping to get a nap in somewhere on Thursday because I'm driving
Okay,
down on Thursday, but we'll see.
sure.
so and Albert says, "Come on Thursday."
Yeah, exactly. We can't get there fast enough. Yeah, and then Frankie brings up a really good point. Of the paranormal hangover that happens all too often.
Yeah.
We talk about this at the end of our investigations all the time to our guests and our public events, but we're up later than usual. We've likely had more caffeine than we normally would to stay up that late, and all of that stuff is just a dehydrator for our bodies. And we those who are out the same amount of time hopping the bars, you wake up with a hangover in the morning. It's a very similar feeling
Hmm.
because honestly, it's just dehydration. Alcohol dehydrates. The same thing occurs when we're not hydrating during the events. No one brings a big bottle of water with them. So I always tell folks to get your Gatorade or whatever your brand of electrolyte of choice is, and chug some water, or whatever. Take a couple aspirin when you get home, and you will feel a whole lot better than if you don't in the morning. It's from experience.
Yeah. So Bert's got a plan here.
Spoken like a senior gentleman right there. All right, I like it. Sounds like a really good plan. And take the tour during the daytime and go back to the house, take a nap. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I'm hoping to get down there around 1 o'clock.
All right.
So
Well, I've been proven wrong by Dr. Todd. Alcohol doesn't dehydrate. Okay. Well, that's my bad. All right. So let's move along and get our stuff for the closeout here, and we'll
all right.
go finish packing.
Yeah. You want to get to bed, don't you? I can.
I have so much stuff to do yet tonight. It's like All right. So, upcoming episodes next week on the 15th, we're going to talk about Tala again, but it's going to be the experiences from all of us who are going down and those who can join us, of course. So, we'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully, we'll have some cool evidence or at least some really cool experiences to share. Um, on the 22nd, we're going to talk to the folks at the Doss House. That is Shauna and Danielle Rigsby. It's a new location, newly opened location here in South Central Pennsylvania. It has a lot of promise, and we're certainly looking forward to having an opportunity to talk with them and perhaps get out to see the
Yep.
site ourselves.
I did see that they had a cancellation, so they've got an opening.
Ooh, okay.
So if
And
you're
for those not seeing us here, the Doss House is DOSSHOUSE, not DOS, perhaps, if you're looking to Google it. And then the 29th, I'm going to cover the Portland tunnels out in Oregon. And on the 6th of May, we're going to have a special guest with um, Land and Legend Paranormal and our friends Stacy and Greg.
may as
Greg?
well jump. Oh,
Yep,
sorry.
yep,
There.
another slide there. And that leads up to our investigation with them coming up on May 17th at Booby's Brewery as a para-unity event opportunity. So we have them coming in as a special team to join with us and our guests that night. So it's really exciting. That is on the horizon now that we're getting into April.
Yep.
So coming very soon. And speaking of investigations, what's coming up with us? We are going to again be at Tala on Thursday, but coming up, we have a public investigation at Booby's Brewery in Mountjoy, PA on April 26th. Tickets are still available. On May 17th, we have our Para-Unity event with Land and Legend Paranormal. Moving into June, which, man, June's like halfway through summer, it feels anyway.
Yeah.
It's not. It's still spring, but it's just like, wow, warm weather finally. We're going to have another public investigation at the brewery. And then we're going to take a field trip on the 28th out to Crescent for the Crescent Paracon and Horror and Paracon event that day. Chad and I will be there with some folks from our team. We'll have a table or booth set up, some opportunities to engage with us there if you're out and about in mid-state PA. It's a really cool place. A former sanatorium, as well as I understand it, used to be owned by the Heinz family. Back in the day, it was supposed to be the ketchup empire.
Mhm.
It was supposed to be the summer residence to get them away from Pittsburgh. And some tragedy befell the family, and it got transitioned to something totally unexpectedly different. So, was its own set of drama and traumas as well. So,
Mhm.
but cool place and really an interesting place to investigate as well. So, the Paracon's during the day, and I think you can get a separate ticket to investigate in the evening if you wish.
I believe you're right.
So, all right, and let's see. And of course, you can always follow us. You're finding us on Facebook and YouTube tonight here in our live event, but we're also on all of the streaming services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and a few others as well. So if you're catching us after the live event, thanks for hanging in with us and catching up with us here. And we do have obviously our Facebook page for the team and for our Jott-Nyx Paranormal team, but also for us with Paranormal Lens. And if you have an interest in sharing something like a thought for an episode or experiences you're having or anything like that, you can always shoot us an email at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com. Chad and I both get that, and we're happy to bring something on to our program that you've suggested. We've done it quite a few times already. We're always willing to move our schedule around. Those things you saw earlier, we self-produce, so we can do whatever we want, which is pretty cool sometimes, right?
Mhm.
But that means we can bump stuff around, and we need a little time to research and dig in a little bit, and but we're happy to move it up to the near the top of the list for you. So
Yep. Or we're happy to have somebody else present for us.
that's true.
I,
We're
I,
always open to guests.
I did. I reached out to our friend Steve Dills a couple weeks ago. Jamie,
Oh my! Here
he is
comes the
ready to.
3 hour episode.
He is ready to come back on anytime we want.
Yes.
So
All right, I got to go on assignment again. That's
yeah,
been a year, by the way. I just was looking at my, remembering things on Facebook, whatever I think it was, like memories, and I was on site doing that research for the Haunted Mansion episode right about a year ago. So
yeah,
it's time for Steve to come around. He and Chris, I believe, covered
yeah.
my seat. That it took two people to fill in for me, but that's cool. No, it didn't. It didn't at all. They were so
So,
much better than me.
so
Uh,
we
but
need
we're
to
down.
we need to get you and Steve on the same episode.
We were. We did Skidwalker episode, so
We did. Yep. So
So yeah, he's due to come back. I'm excited to see that and catch up with him too. So,
I,
obviously catch up with what's going on down there.
I'm not sure what Albert said would no to here, but
I don't
anyway,
either. But did you? I'm sorry, I was not looking at the pop ups here. But did you share Bert's comment about?
I did not. I know we've talked about this.
There's Bert saying no, but Bert has a background in uh, law enforcement and corrections, and he used to transport prisoners to and from Crescent when it was open, which again here in Midstate PA was that facility where folks were dumped, very much like Tala. I'm sorry. He did clarify the no was the 2 hour episode potential. I
Uh,
said 3 hours, by the way. So, um, and then because what you guys don't know, and this is the fun of it for us sometimes, is that when we have a guest, we talk before with each other, of course, to set up getting into the episode. But then after, once we go through everything, we tend to hang on a little bit longer as well. I believe we had a 2 full-hour episode with Ron Yacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez a while back. And then afterwards, I think we still had another 45-minute conversation after that.
yeah,
So,
yeah, and I think it was like 15 minutes before, and
yeah. So,
yeah.
and that's fantastic time with fantastic
Oh
people. I'm
yeah,
never going to
definitely.
complain about that. But,
So,
it's one of those things where it's what you don't see,
yeah,
and leading
yeah,
into it and leading out of it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Frankie said Crescent is another intense location. So
Yes. Yep.
I've not been there yet, but it's definitely on my list.
Yeah.
So
Well, we will be there coming
yep.
up. So it's going to be a pretty exciting day. So,
So all
um,
right. Well, Jamie, I know you want to get going so you can get packed and get everything wrapped up. So
I got packing to do. I got dogs to walk, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to see bed eventually. But um, Chad, thank you for covering this
mhm,
and really doing a deep dive into the intricacies of it. This is sensitive
mhm,
stuff, and and setting the stage for us to get there this week. It really helps me as well. What I think I know isn't everything, obviously, and you
right.
really covered some of the key points, and I appreciate that, making sure we're all prepared for what we're going to walk into and experience. So, and we're excited for next week. I'm already excited. I mean, I don't want this to pass. I don't want to look
Right.
over the event and being there, but I'm really looking forward to getting everyone together and talking about it after as well.
Yep.
It's going to be super
Um,
cool.
yep,
So,
definitely. So
all right.
all right. Well, on that note, we will see everybody. Well, if all things work correctly, we will see
We
everybody
hope.
next
We
week.
hope we'll see you all next week.
So we'll see some of you on Tuesday or Thursday,
Yep.
and we'll see the rest of you next Tuesday. So good night. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you soon.